Okay, so this is kind of part 2 to the buildathon video, and what I've actually done here is I've started laying out the capacitors in order. Now what I've done is I've used a magnifying glass to identify the numbers actually on the side. They are quite small. You may need a magnifying glass, and what I've done here is I've actually just laid them out so you can sort of see what they are. And I've also taken the things like the regulator, the big regulator there, and actually then broken down what the pins are. So I've laid it on its back. The very right pin in this particular case, so the very left pin is going to be bent up, and the other two will go into the board as shown. But as we looked at yesterday, this tiny regulator here I've laid on the rounded back, okay, so that the flat side is up, okay, and you can see here it goes out ground and then in from left to right, and on the big regulator it's completely the opposite. It's in, ground and out. That's when I said to you yesterday I'd actually made some errors on here. I'd actually printed these around the wrong way. Different components, and even from some, if you get like a different manufacturer, you might find that components have different pin layouts. So you need to make sure that if you're using any components from various manufacturers, that you get the very specific data sheet, so that you know exactly what it is you're dealing with, because you can run into errors. And in this particular case, I've been and looked at the data sheets, and I've made sure that these are quite correct. And as I said, we will in part 3 we'll do some checks and tests after we've soldered everything together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start populating the board. Now 471, okay, is 47 and 10, so that's 407, sorry, 407, that's 470 picofarads. Now picofarads is a very it's a trillionth of a farad, okay, so it's really very small. And so we're going to take that one and we're going to insert that goes in that 470 picofarad slot there, okay. And what we'll do is some people don't like doing this. I don't mind, it's fine. I'm just going to gently bend those pins out just a little bit. Now this, I mean, there are other ways you can do this. You can use Kapton tape or something like that to hold the components down. There are loads of different ways of doing this. I just will check everything before I put the solder, take it to the solder stage, because obviously if you put a bend in them, and also this is double-sided, so the holes are plated all the way through. If you change your mind or make a mistake, it's really difficult to get these components out without damaging the board. So we'll carry on with that. So far we've inserted the 470 picofarad one. The next one we're going to look for is the 0.47, the 0.47, which is, where is he there, microfarads. So he goes in that slot there. Now we'll take him, okay, and we'll just slot him in there, and just quickly check 47 and 40, that is correct. And I'm just holding him down and just putting a very slight tweak on those components, like so. Now I'm actually looking for the 104, and there's 2 of those, and they are these 2 here. They're 0.1 microfarad, and there's 2 of those there. Okay, and they just simply pop in. We put one in there. We take that one there as well, and he goes in there. Now a majority of these are actually tied, they're actually used in the regulator circuits. I did do 2 rails here, one did 12 volt side and one did 18 volts. Well, that's not going to happen that way, but I'm still keeping them in because I'm using the regulator up here, so I can use these to tie that down to ground and just keep everything nice and hunky-dory. Right, now comes this last capacitor, which is 103. Okay, and that one there is the 10 nanofarad. Okay, and he is the odd one out. It's slightly different shape than all the others, but it doesn't matter, it does the same job. Okay, and we just push him in as far as he'll go, don't force anything, and then I'm just going to just bend those lugs just slightly back. There you go. Okay, and then, as I say, you don't have to bend these pins back. Some people don't like doing it. I don't mind. I've done it so many times now. It's very easy for me to do that way. You don't have to do it. So if someone's telling you don't do it, then, and you don't want to do it, then fine. That's entirely up to you. Now, yesterday I explained that, and I've just mentioned just now about the different data sheets. Different manufacturers might have different pin layouts, etc, etc. I did exactly that. Okay, when I was laying out this board, what I'd done is I'd used the wrong component in the board layout software, and the pins are exactly reversed. So they were exactly this, and reality is it's this, so it's completely the opposite. So the easy way around that is just to reverse the actual regulator round. So when you insert this into the board, okay, I'm actually putting this in backwards. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that. So when you actually look, I'm going to push this down as far as it'll go. Don't go too nuts because it will split the transistor or the regulator. But this is in opposite to what the silk screen says. Okay, so this is saying that the D goes around that way, but it isn't. In reality, it's going up that way. Okay, and that's important to note because you will get some strange results otherwise. You know, you can, yeah, just do put that in the opposite way around. That's completely my fault, but it wasn't worth redoing the board just because that it was just so easy just to turn it around. Right, now then, and then comes the next modification that I made, okay, which is this one. We know that one there, that right pin there, is the output, and we know that center one there is the ground, and we know that one there is the input. Okay, so if you look at the board here, I've actually marked it 20 to 25 volts. That is actually incorrect now. It doesn't, that's not relevant, so don't look at that. The that ground is obviously still relevant, but what we can do here is we can just, if we turn that round so that, okay, that the unit is it's facing that way round, so the back sort of looking to the center of the board. Okay, and what I've done is I put the ground pin, or the center pin, okay, goes in to the ground port, into the ground hole, and then the output pin goes into the 20-25 volt marked hole, and I'm going to push that down just as far as it will go. Okay, don't go nuts again, don't try not to force anything, there's no need. And I'm just going to give that just a tiny little tweak, okay, just to hold it in place. Now you'll see here I've put one pin, okay, kicking forward. Now that's going to be our input. Now what I'll do is I'll bring that up a little bit more in a minute when that's soldered in, and then what we'll do is we'll put a little bit of heat shrink on that and actually bring that forward. And what we could do, we could be a little bit clever actually, and then actually bend that pin forward, okay, and then we'll bend that pin forward, Actually, let's get a pair of pliers, just bear with just a second. If I can find a pair. They're a bit big, but they might just do. Let's bring that up. There you go. Okay. So now we've got, if you see what I've done there, okay, we've now got two pins facing forward. We've got the ground pin underneath, and let me see if I can get in a bit closer. Yeah, we've got underneath here, we've got the ground pin facing forward, which I've bent forward underneath, and then this pin here I bent forward just like that. Okay, so looking down, so with the back facing down, okay, that is the output, that is the ground, and that's the input. So we're going to put probably 24 volts into this pin, and we're going to heat shrink protect it, and the ground from the power supply will go onto this one, or the negative will go onto this pin, and we'll protect that with a bit of heat shrink as well. Okay, so that is the board pretty much laid out with all the components on. Now yesterday I said that, or in the part one, I said that we put these in first. Having a little think about it, I don't think that's, I'll leave them out just for now, and then what we'll do is we'll put them in a moment. But what we can do is this stage we can actually now go on to part 2 of the video, or sorry, part 3 of the video, where I'll solder all these things up and get these ready for putting in the inductor, okay, and the two last pieces, and then we can then move on to testing and making sure that everything works. So all I can say is, for the next part of the video, make sure that you've got some form of 24 volt power supply, or a 20 volt power supply. It doesn't really matter that much. It only needs to be a maximum of, say, about an amp. It doesn't need to be anything huge. You will need some pliers and obviously a soldering iron. You need a pair of cutters, actually. Let me just find a pair of cutters. Now, this is a very old pair I've got here, but these are the best sort of cutters for circuit boards. They're very flat backed, okay, and you can get really tight in there to trim those pins off. Now you're going to need a pair of cutters for the next stage, and obviously you're going to need some very fine solder. Here I've got some very fine solder. It's, you know, it's about 1 millimeter diameter. I'm using leaded solder here. Don't let the word lead scare you. It's not that bad, and you can use unleaded if you want. It just takes a little bit more heat, and believe it or not, this board will take a fair bit of heat from a soldering iron. You will need a soldering iron. I would recommend a minimum of 15 watts, maximum of 25 watts. You're not going to need any more. 25 watts will be perfect for doing these, I will be honest, but 15 watts will do these, but you just need to spend a bit of time doing it. Yeah, so that'll do for today's little video. So if you lay everything out and just take your time, and then once you get to this stage, just triple check everything, okay? Lay everything out as I've done here. Make sure that you've got everything. Make sure that you've reversed the regulator to the screen print, because obviously that's my mistake. Yeah, that needs to happen. Don't put it in the correct way round, if you know what I mean. Make sure you've got this regulator in as I've shown it there, and make sure that all of the components, all the capacitors are all in their right sort of slots, because obviously the next stage is fairly permanent. All right, so I'll leave you with that. Thanks for watching, and see you in part 3.